Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Rangers Review morning briefing for Monday, the 6th of March. I'm Derek Clark, and I'm joined this morning by Joshua Barrie. How are we getting on, Joshua?
Yeah, good, Derek. Looking forward to talking about the game. Always feels like quite a long wait when it's a Monday morning compared to a Saturday game. So,
yeah,
lots to get into.
Yeah, well, we've got a midweek game to look forward to this week. So, plenty to discuss all things Rangers. Before we do that, folks, you know that the drill by now. Just a quick word for our podcast sponsors. Seneca Hair Restoration, the number one guys to go to if you're looking to perhaps get some more hair on the top of your head. Joshua doesn't need to worry about that, but perhaps myself and other like-minded individuals, maybe something you'll be thinking about in some time in the future, perhaps a Dick Advocat or a Kamar Roof, I think, had a hair transplant recently, didn't he? So if you fancy that, folks, then these are the guys to go to, the number one hair transplant corporation in Europe. And as ever, I've stuck all the relevant links in the description box, so do go check them out. If you want to subscribe to the YouTube channel, we're nearing 12,000 subscribers, which is fantastic. Hit that subscribe button, hit the bell, and you'll never miss a video when we go live. And if you want to take advantage of our offer on the website just now, just £2 for 2 months worth of content, head over to rangersreview.co.uk/subscribe for all the details. Right, Joshua, lots to talk about. We'll touch on a quick thing that emerged this morning before we look back at the game on Saturday. Of course, Rangers getting back to winning ways against Kilmarnock at Ibrox, winning by 3-1. Stewart Gibson has given an interview to the This Is Ibrox podcast, and of course, investor in the club. He's backed Stuart Robertson, James Bisgrove and Ross Wilson, saying he believes all three get a lot of undeserved flack. The trio have come under fire, of course, in recent weeks with the Rangers supporters, with publicly calling for a change from the stands. We've seen that a banner being displayed at the weekend, broadcasting their displeasure. Stuart Gibson has said on Ross Wilson, he says he points to the big money sales of Calvin Bassey and Joe Aribo as massive home runs for the club, while also highlighting the unfortunate luck the club has experienced with injuries this season. And he's told the podcast he's doing an excellent job and continues to do so, given the lack of ample resources he has to work with. Now, you can go and watch that interview, folks. We'll just touch on it briefly. I've seen on social media a lot of supporters giving their reactions to it. Joshua, it's quite a controversial subject at the moment. There is a lot of bit of ill feeling amongst the supporter base towards Ross Wilson at the moment, and to some extent, we've seen Stuart Robertson.
Yeah, I think you can cut through this whole argument and debate, Derek, and I'm sure that Ross Wilson and Stuart Robertson would completely understand this as well. When Rangers are not winning trophies, it's going to be very hard to be in a management position. And if you have been there over the time where they have been and then they've not been again, when it's a week after a cup final, as Johnny put in his piece last week, I think it's about perception and what it's difficult to change perception once people have started to make their mind up about something. But when that League Cup final has been lost, and again, it's within the context of the last year and a half, that's why the reaction was such after the League Cup final, because this obviously the new signings come into it and all the stuff we don't need to go over from next week, but it's a continuation of stuff that has been carried over naturally into the new manager's era because that game has been lost. So I think it's about perception. I don't think that many people will agree with Stewart Gibson's comments. Obviously, he has insight into the role of Ross Wilson and that others don't, insight into his role as sporting director and what that entails. For all the things it does entail, I think the ultimate barometer that we judged on is success on the park and trophies and the trajectory of the team. At the moment, that's been positive under Michael Beale. Apart from that cup final, and I think until there's substantial change in Old Firm games or Scottish Cup to start that building process, it will be difficult to shift that. I don't know if you disagree, but I think that's just the way it's going to always be at Ibrox.
Yeah, the club need to start adding silverware to the trophy room, or else there'll be fan unrest. That's the way it works in Glasgow. Unfortunately, Scott Patterson says all quiet on This Is Ibrox Towers this morning, Derek. Yeah, I can imagine, Scott. That interview, Stewart Gibson, folks at the Rangers investor backing James Bisgrove, Stuart Robertson and Ross Wilson. We'll talk about that more in detail tomorrow, folks. But I wanted to get your thoughts, Joshua, on the action at the weekend. Rangers getting back to winning ways against Kilmarnock, of course. Bit of a Jekyll and Hyde performance once again. You could say after a really terrific first half showing from Rangers, running into a 3-0 lead. Kilmarnock were to get a goal back just on the hour mark. Gerald Dorset scoring. Connor Goldson fashions Sakala and a James Tavernier penalty on the stroke of half-time, sending Rangers on their way to 3 points. You were there for us, Joshua. The fans leaving Ibrox, if they left at half-time, I'm sure that they'd have been pleased with what they witnessed. However, there's a bit of a drop-off in the second half, shall we say.
Yeah, and that's what people kind of remember. Normally when we have these conversations, Derek, it's about Rangers having a slow start and then coming into it in the second half. It was a complete opposite at the weekend. Rangers really have not totaled up the goals in these types of games over the past couple of seasons where they've raced into a 3-0 lead by half-time. I can't remember many occasions where they've done that against teams like Kilmarnock, who will come and try to frustrate and then take their moments, which is 70, 80, 90% of the games Rangers face at Ibrox domestically. If Rangers had played like that in different periods throughout the game instead of bunching it all into 145 and then the second 45, I think the reaction would be different. I think there is a need for some, I don't know, just a bit of realization that it's not many teams can retain their standards throughout the whole 90 minutes. That said, I think the drop-off was so dramatic and it was so sloppy after the break compared to the first half, which was really good. I've got a couple of, I'm just going to take this away, Derek, so I've got a couple of graphs to show this. This is the expected goals timeline, just charts the opportunities. And if you see the big dip in the chart, just where it goes 3-0 Rangers, that's about half-time. And you can see there, I mean, Kilmarnock, aside from their goal, didn't really create much, even though they had a couple of big opportunities. Rangers created almost, I think it was 2.8 expected goals in the first half and 0.6 in the second half. Really didn't create any strong opportunities of note, and it just became a second half that kind of existed without anything really happening. Michael Beale obviously acknowledged that in the post-match press conference while still wanting to focus on the good stuff within the first half, and you can understand why. He spoke about the likes of Raskin and Jack have not played much football, and I think with Raskin in particular, started the game really strongly, tailed off in the second half. Rangers gave up the ball so cheaply. Kilmarnock committed another player to the attack, and it wasn't until Lundstrom came on and Rangers had a kind of extra body at the base of midfield that they managed to regain some control. I think the really interesting thing for me, Derek, and I've got another graph to show this here. We'll have this all on the website soon with articles to join that. This is a pass network from the game, and what this shows you is the average position that players assumed on the pitch. So you can see Cantwell, Raskin, Jack and Kent in the midfield. Obviously the fullbacks not as high as they can be at points, but still forming the width. What I think is really interesting from the weekend was Colak's role. Beale said it was the main takeaway, and we can discuss him a little bit more. Rangers played 32 successful passes into Colak, Derek, which is quite a lot considering what his average is. I think his average is more about 15. But you can see him and Sakala either side almost forming a bit of a front two up top against Kilmarnock's three centre-halves. Behind that, I think you had really nice fluidity between Raskin, Kent and Cantwell. The best chance that demonstrated that for me, Derek, was the one where Sakala should score from Kent's cross. It comes from Colak, assuming that position on the left, that quick bounce pass into him, Kent going beyond, crossing it for Sakala, who should do better. So I think there was a lot of good in that first half, a lot of encouraging signs. If you look at that pass network, you can see clear roles, Rangers playing with two goal scorers, the fluidity of the midfielders behind them. The difficulty is doing that over 90 minutes and obviously doing that consistently, and that's what Beale still has to work out now. But I think that's going to be more of a summer job when he's able to put his print on the team fully.
Yeah, there's lots of comments coming in, Josh. I'll get to a few of them. This one from Kev Armstrong is an interesting one. What did Joshua make of the switch to a 4-4-2 narrow in the second half? What did you make of that?
Well, I think it was that kind of existed in the first half as well. Beale's team, I think that it's more of a roles thing than a positions thing. So he's spoken a lot about having those two goal scorers, and that's why Sakala plays, because although he has that performance at Hampden where it's erratic and he should do better, he gets your goals, and his goal summed that up perfectly, because it's not scrappy, but it's just in the right place at the right time. He should score from that cross, and Rangers in these types of games over the course of the last season and a half, I think especially under Gio, as we've touched on a lot before, just didn't have sufficient goal threat. Outside of Colak and Sakala in that team, you don't really have a goal scorer at all. Tavernier, yes, when he gets high into the area, but Kent isn't going to get you a lot of goals. Cantwell, we don't really know yet, but doesn't look like it from his start, doesn't look like his predominant role. So if you only have Colak in there when the game is about trying to obviously break down the opposition, I think you need someone else. And I think Beale's done that pretty well. But to Kev's point, I thought the kind of rotation and movement of those three midfielders, I mean, Cantwell and Raskin improved that so much in the first half, even if it did dip off in the second half, as we discussed, Eric. So it is a bit more of a distant memory. But I think that was closer to what Beale wants to do at home. And again, that chance with Kent bouncing the ball off Colak and then Sakala at the back post, after there's in the lead up to that chance, real fluidity in the midfield. That shows the type of football I think that Beale wants to create and wants to play at Ibrox, because it's so difficult for opponents to kind of combat when it's so flexible.
Yeah, let's get to a few more that are coming in. First of all, Maka says, morning all, result of the weekend has to be Souness, Shredding, Neville and Keane, top drawer. Also, thanks to Johnny, great interview with Martin. Yeah, absolutely. Great hour-long interview with Martin Ramsey, who, of course, is bringing out his new book, Revolution, 1986 to 1992, looking at that Souness and Walter Smith era. Fantastic interview, folks. Do go check it out. And there's a link in that video on our YouTube channel where you can pre-order Martin's book as well. So I do urge you to go and check it out. Lots of love coming in for Antonio Colak. Joshua, Mark says, thought Colak looked more like himself. And Denzel gets in touch. Thought Colak looked very mobile and deserves a start midweek. Hope he can get goals soon. Looks bright. Of course, that was echoed by Michael Beale in the post-match press conference. He was asked, is it now a choice between Morelos and Colak up front? Pardon me. He says, well, I've only had one option of Alfredo fully fit as a number 9 since I've come back in, so it wasn't a choice of picking them, really. Today I've decided to go with Tony because I felt his personality and energy was worth a start. I wanted more energy in that position today, and obviously he didn't play last week, so he's not carried the same amount of weight as maybe the boys that have played. I thought you see that in the performance. We've got 2 more games this week. There's no other reason for leaving Alfredo other than I want to give Tony a go, and I thought he played fantastically. You know, if that's a boy that was fully fit at the start of the season and doing well, and I haven't seen that until today, so I'm delighted for him on a personal level. That was his best, no doubt about it, his best performance under Michael Beale, Joshua. He's not had many outings, you've got to say. I think his only start was against Partick Thistle, if I'm not mistaken.
Dundee United away as well, but I think he came off at half-time then.
Yeah, he wasn't himself, but yeah, that's more like the Antonio Colak that we saw at the start of the season. He's linking up well as well. I
think it's the type of game that should suit him, because these are the games where he'll get goals. I know he didn't at the weekend, Derek, but it was encouraging that the thing we're talking about is his link-up play. We've not seen that from Colak all that much. Maybe we've not also seen Colak have the opportunity to do that, because under Gio, his role was very much to be between the sticks and only get involved in patches. There was one moment where he turned, I think it was Ash Taylor coming into midfield brilliantly. And yeah, it was encouraging to see him just look so clean, I think, in his link-up play. He played those bounce passes back a lot. He wasn't turning and switching the ball as much as Morelos, and we'll have his pass network in the piece that's going to be out on the website quite soon. But that was really effective because it allows players to run off him. It created overloads. It gave the Kilmarnock defenders a choice. Are they going to go in or are they going to stay back? And if obviously they stay back, then Rangers have a free man. If they go in, then Rangers have space in the defence to run into. He looked fit, he looked sharp. Beale said a few times, and it's kind of went under the radar, that he hadn't actually been able to train much at all. A few weeks ago, I think it was 30% of sessions he said he'd been involved in since he came to the club, because obviously he's had, I think it was 2 injury issues since Beale arrived. But I think Colak's going to be here next season. I don't know if he's going to be the first choice striker when you look at European games and big away games. but he certainly has a lot to offer, and encouraging to see him in that Michael Beale system and see how it works, because there was a lot of conversation in January saying that Beale didn't fancy him or he wouldn't suit, but the truth is, Derek, we hadn't seen him. We hadn't seen him playing that team with runners around him. I thought in a game where he had to help break down the defence, I thought he did really well.
Yeah, I agree. Lots of comments echoing that as well. Gordon Bond raises an interesting point. If Colak is our player and Morelos isn't staying, then I would play Colak and get him consistent and fully fit. And Wool 480 says if Colak should start against Hibs, need to give him a run where he can get a good run of form going again. And that also ties in with this comment from Ian Ross. Joshua, he says, do you think he'll play Morelos and Colak up front on Wednesday?
Nah,
he did. Was it his initial press conference when he was unveiled? He did discuss that. We haven't really seen it at all. I don't think. I can't see that being the case, but I think there is certainly a selection headache as to who he plays up front. If you're Michael Beale, Joshua, if you're in his shoes, is it Tony Goals as he's affectionately known, or Alfredo?
I think only 2 of Colak's goals in the league have come away from home since he came to Rangers, Tynecastle, yeah. But then, as I was just saying there, we've not seen him really with Beale away from home. And you'd hope that as it evolves under Beale, that Rangers away from home won't look too different at home, because they'll still be able to dominate the ball and have the better of the game. I think the reason that the reason that Colak and Morelos haven't played together is because of what Sakala gives you that's different. He can run in behind, he can play wide. He's not a kind of back to goal striker, whereas Morelos definitely is in his link up play, and Colak also isn't someone that I think is going to run in behind too much. So maybe it's just about getting different styles of player in there. And I think Sakala started something like 13 of 16 games under Beale so far. So Beale obviously really likes him, wants him in there for a reason. Whereas Colak and Morelos, I don't know if either of those players could play that role that Sakala or Roof did. Roof did obviously a couple of seasons ago, where with the ball they kind of act as a number 9 at points, but without it, they don't. And they can also do different things, whether that be dropping into midfield, running in behind, holding the width on the right. But you're right, Derek. He did say before the Hibs game in mid-December that it was going to be Colak and Morelos that started the game together. Maybe it's just a case that Sakala got in there, and football's a bit about luck sometimes. And because he got in, he has been able to keep that place. I'd be surprised if Colak and Morelos is the 2 that starts at Hibs, but you never know. We did see it for a little bit at the weekend, and we haven't really seen it so far. So I'd be surprised if it was away at Hibs.
Yeah, lots of arguments for and against Colak starting at Hibs in the comments. It certainly seems to split opinion, that's for sure. Another interesting point at the weekend, Joshua, the Man of the Match award, but certainly it had a lot of people scratching their head. Graham Morrison gets in touch. Morning, Graham. He says, "Happy Monday, guys. Was at Killigame. Brother-in-law was a match sponsor. JR's hospitality, fantastic. I went for Cantwell Player of the Match, but was voted down." Cantwell was terrific, Joshua. I'm really excited to see more of this boy. I think he looks like he's settling in well. It's also a point that's raised by Bob, who gets in touch. Cantwell looked determined to score. I'd stick with the starting 11 for Wednesday. And Jamie Brown also with a comment here. Great to finally have players like Cantwell and Raskin passing and moving. Pretty much everyone else passes and stops. Why did it take so long to get the subs on? Perfect chance to get minutes in the legs. But just touching on Cantwell, Joshua, I think he was at the unofficial man of the match, I would say. But your man of the match at the weekend?
Yeah, no, I agree with Graham. I think Graham was right, even if he was voted down. That said, I think Ben Davies in these types of games, the ability he has with that left foot can't be underrated.
Class.
So it's so important. And when Rangers have so much of the ball, I think that at points Ben Davies in the air looks a little bit suspect. I don't think he's that dominant. That's something he's acknowledged himself. But with that being said, what he gives you on the ball, what he gives you in trying to break down a defence, playing whether it be those lofted balls, diagonals over the top, or whether it be those kind of wrapped passes into the striker's feet, I think that far outweighs any negatives, especially in these types of home games. So, I think that's an important point. But Cantwell was the best player for me. I think he was probably the only player whose level didn't really drop. He was still driving the team forward, taking the ball, when Ibrox was getting a bit restless and frustrated after all those stray passes. He said after the game that he was starting to feel fitter, still not where he wants to be, but I think he's getting closer to that. The midfield, Derek, I mean, there's no other way to say it than it looks so much better with Raskin and Cantwell.
Oh, yeah.
And Jamie's comment there, passing and moving, it's simple, isn't it? But it was just that movement off the ball, the ability to pass forward, do things quickly. I think sometimes you can just see players how good they are very quickly. And Cantwell and Raskin certainly looked like that in the first half. I think you need movement and players who take responsibility to try and break down defences in that type of game. We've spoken a lot about what Raskin can give you on the ball as well as off it. And I thought the weekend was another good demonstration of that, how he can, from a deep midfield position, even though he was slightly higher, try and break down defences. So encouraging to see both of those performances. But Cantwell, yeah, really good start. I think everyone really likes him. And the encouraging thing, Derek, is that's his, third or fourth start at Rangers. So looks like there's a lot more to come.
Yeah, and by all accounts, he's loving it at Ibrox as well, which is great to see. And rightly so, Stephen, and a number of you saying he was the man of the match from Rangers TV. So, the sponsors certainly just, I think they would have fancied meeting Ben Davis, and who wouldn't? He's a top pro. And like you say, Joshua, I know Johnny and Maurice Ross had a little... a bit of a debate at the weekend when Johnny picked out a brilliant pass to Sakala, I think it was. He should have really squared it for Colak, if I'm not mistaken, across the face of goal. Yeah. But it was such a great ping. And Morris says, have a look at his defending. It's certainly something that he still has to win some supporters over with regards to his defending. But for me, I've been quite satisfied with Ben Davis. I think he complements Connor Goldson well. Interview I did with his former Preston teammate a while ago, sort of just a mirror image of the Goldson-Davis partnership, whereas he's not a dominant centre-back. He's a ball-playing centre-back, which is a big reason why Rangers went out and got him, left-sided player. For me, I know there's a lot of debate about last week, and it wasn't their best of games against Celtic. I don't think they were alone in that. But for me, in the main, Joshua, I've been pretty satisfied with that back two pairing.
Yeah, I mean, there probably is a few games a season, Derek, where you want a different profile of centre-back if teams are just going to lob the ball in constantly for aerial duels. But in a game like that, what would you rather have? Would you rather have someone who, yes, he might win a couple more headers or he might put in a harder tackle, but he can't pass the ball forwards? I mean, I think if you look at the way that Davies plays forwards, that's what you need from that position, which is constantly evolving and is different to what it was, I guess, 5 or 10 years ago. But Rangers need a player in that position who's able to break down defences, even starting at the very back. Of course, he's not been perfect and does have weaknesses to his game. I think any player at this level will. Just as there's other players in the squad who have really good traits about them. Someone like Kent, who has so much to his game, but maybe his decision making lets him down at points. There's a reason that they've not went on to play at the top level yet. And I do think that having someone, whether it be Suter or someone else in that squad that can just provide that different profile of centre back, could be useful. But generally, I agree with you, Derek. I think it's been a net positive. And Davies, you'd hope as well, he's still only played 15 games or so with a real consistent run of form. Normally, it takes players a little bit longer to show their best. So giving him the benefit of that doubt as well, I think you'd hope that there's still a little bit more to come from him.
Yeah, and it's all about opinions on this show, and there's contrasting ones coming in. Connor Fleming, a good friend of the show, says Katic and Davis chalk and cheese. He says, but Mr. M says Davis can't defend, doesn't attack balls, distribution overrated, caught out of position, constant, and one paced. Malky 50 says, I quite like Davis. I think he can do us a ton. Like you, Josh, I think I've been quite impressed with him thus far. Another play that came on that we've not seen for absolutely ages at the tail end of the game on Saturday was John Suter. Scott Hammond says, great to see Suter come on for the final few minutes. Will he get his chance in his natural position right side of the centre of defence? Not entirely sure he will, but it's just great to see him back in the Rangers jersey again. He was the forgotten man pretty much after that opening day win against Livingston. But touch wood, he can steer clear of injury. The old the saying, no cliches like a new signing, but we know he's had his injury problems to seek for a number of years now, Joshua, but it's one of those ones that you just hope you can steer clear of injury from here on in, because it certainly adds more options and it's good for Rangers to call upon if needed.
Yeah, Ross Wilson said at the AGM that made an interesting comment. I can't remember exactly what it was. It was something about we went in with our eyes wide open to the deal, I think it was. Obviously acknowledging the Rangers would have checked his injury history going into that game. I know when you look at the injury record this season, that it's so poor that this conversations, we've had it so often, Derek. But there was an acknowledgement that Rangers thought they could fix those issues or help him to play consistently. I think as he did for most of the season before he joined Rangers. If you can get him fit, I think he's a great domestic centre-back for Rangers, who's also played at an international level. You remember his performance in the Scottish Cup final against Rangers in his final game for Hearts, which was really good. But until I think he pieces together a run of form, a run of availability in the same way as Kemar Roofe, Derek, this conversation, people will kind of, they want to see the evidence of it before they start to count on Suter to be involved just naturally. Because of how much of football he's missed this season. I think his last performance was actually the opening day of the season when he had quite a difficult day at Livingston,
yes.
Which seems like 3 seasons ago, let alone the start of this season. So
yeah,
but great moment for him, because I'm sure a lot of hard work will have gone into getting back and making that first competitive start at Ibrox. Obviously, he was involved in the pre-season games, but good to see him get a few minutes. I think Beale was speaking in the press conference after, frustrated. He said that the game wasn't in a position where he could bring on the likes of Hagi and Suter a bit earlier, because it went 3-1. Obviously, they only kind of got a couple of minutes in injury time instead of maybe 15-20 minutes as he'd have hoped for.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a comment come in that's an interesting one from Rob Call. He says, Suter and Davis against Wraith is the ideal time to give him a good run out. Yeah, I would be inclined to start him against Wraith Rovers. Ditto other players, French players, Joshua, like Yanis Hagi. I think that's a great time, although it didn't look too great against Partick Thistle, but Rangers need to get him on the pitch more. I know he came on at the tail end of the game at the weekend, but with all due respect, Rangers should be beating Wraith Rovers at Ibrox. I'd be looking at playing some of these players. Would you be making wholesale changes for that game?
Especially after you've got an away game in midweek. You'd expect the likes of Hagi and others to come in. It's a shame that Alex Lowry isn't available. He was obviously another topic of conversation in the post-match press conference. Yes. Just another one of these situations in a season absolutely full of them. The difficulty is there's actually not many games compared to previous seasons. Obviously, this time last year, if anyone needs a reminder, Rangers were on some sort of European run that went quite well, and the regularity of those games, along with the Scottish Cup run, meant that rotation was needed. Whereas at the moment, as you say this week, Derek, we're not used to midweek games at the moment. Rangers obviously have a B team instead of a reserve team, so there's, I guess, limitations to the minutes that these players can play as they need to get match fit. You'd hope that Ridvan Yilmaz is also back. Beale said that's a possibility. Malik Tillman hopefully will be back for one of those 2 games as well. Really looking forward to seeing Ridvan back. Hopefully he can get a run of form, run between the end of the season, because that's now about 4 months since he went down against Aberdeen, which is a long time. And again, when you put that in alongside Roofe and Lawrence being out for the season, and Roofe having suffered another injury setback, it'd be great to get the likes of Ridvan back, just so you can bring that freshness into the squad and get him a run before the start of next season, where you'd presume he'd be the first choice left back.
Yeah, just touching on Alex Lowry, there's a few comments coming in. Michael Beale was asked about him in his post-match press conference. He says, the day before the Partick Thistle game, he was in the thinking to start. No one was near him. The ball came and he turned and he had a problem with his ankle, and it was a 6-week injury, which he is 2 weeks into. So he's out of the boot at the moment, but Alex is probably 4 weeks from being ready to play. So still a fair bit off from returning to contention is Alex Lowry. Okay, folks, I think that'll do us there. We've got the press conference this afternoon at lunchtime coming thick and fast, of course. Huge game on Wednesday night. Rangers head to Leith to take on the Hibs at Easter Road. Hopefully we can continue in that vein of form that Michael Beale has enjoyed since returning to the club. I think the only real blip, as we know, was that League Cup final defeat. But tough place to go at times, Hibernian under Lee Johnson, but hit and miss this season. But Rangers have shown they are capable of going to these tough venues and getting a result. So hopefully they can do likewise on Wednesday. We'll have all reaction to that press conference in tomorrow's show. Myself and Johnny will be on the video. Joshua will be at the press conference for us, folks, so stay tuned to our YouTube account and our website as well for all the reaction to that. And if you want to subscribe to the Rangers Review, you can take advantage of our great offer, £2 for 2 months worth of content. Go and head over to rangersreview.co.uk/subscribe for all the details. Okay, enjoy the rest of your Monday, and we'll be back tomorrow. Bye for now.